Look at this ranking. This is a list of the world's largest holders of US Treasury bonds. You've got Japan, China, the UK, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, and then sandwiched between Germany and Saudi Arabia, there's a name that has no business being there. Tether, a private company with around 300 employees registered in El Salvador that you've probably never thought about, yet it holds more US government debt than most sovereign nations on Earth. So how did we get here? Tether is the company behind USDT, the world's largest stablecoin. A stablecoin is a digital token pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar. 1 USDT equals $1, always. To maintain that peg, regulators and market expectations require Tether to hold dollar-equivalent reserves for every token in circulation. That means cash and US Treasury bills. As of late 2025, there are over 186 billion USDT in circulation. That means Tether needs to hold roughly $186 billion in reserves, and $135 billion of that is sitting in US government debt. That makes Tether the 17th largest holder of US Treasuries in the world, more than South Korea, more than Germany, more than Saudi Arabia. Here's the thing, USDT isn't popular in New York or Toronto. It's popular in Buenos Aires, in Istanbul, in Lagos, in countries where local currencies lose 50%, 80%, even 100% of their value in a single year. For those people, holding USDT is the closest thing they have to holding a US dollar without a US bank account. It moves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It crosses borders in seconds. No bank hours, no SWIFT delays, no questions asked. That's why Tether now has over 500 million users globally, more users than most countries have citizens. For years, stablecoins like USDT operated in a legal gray zone. Tether launched in 2014. USDC followed in 2018. They grew fast without a clear rulebook. Then on July 18, 2025, President Trump signed the Genius Act into law. The full name, the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act. For the first time in American history, a federal law formally recognized privately issued stablecoins as a legitimate part of the financial system. Issuers must now hold 100% reserves in U.S. dollars or short-term treasuries. Monthly public disclosures, anti-money laundering compliance, full audit trails. This was a landmark moment. But it also cracked open a door that had been shut for 160 years. Let me take you back to 1837. Between 1837 and 1863, the United States lived through what historians call the free banking era. No federal banking authority. Individual states handed out bank charters freely. And what happened? Churches printed money, railroad companies printed money, insurance firms printed money, even pharmacies printed money. At its peak, thousands of different institutions were issuing their own paper currency, each with different values, different faces, different levels of trust. Merchants had to carry a publication called the Bank Note Reporter, a literal manual for identifying which bills were real and which were fake. And roughly 1/3 of all bills in circulation were counterfeit or worthless. Some bankers pulled an even simpler scam. They'd open a bank in the middle of nowhere, print cash, hand it out, then make sure no one could ever find them when customers came to redeem it. These became known as wildcat banks because the only things nearby were wildcats. By the time the Civil War began, nearly half of all U.S. banks had already failed, people's life savings, and gone overnight. In 1863, Congress passed the National Bank Act, one unified currency, one federal standard, monetary power returned to the government. And for 160 years, America operated on a shared understanding. Printing money is not something just anyone gets to do. The Genius Act didn't just create new rules, it broke a 160-year-old consensus. For the first time, private companies have federal legal authority to issue what is functionally money. And this time, it's not just paper in a local town. It's a digital token running on blockchain rails available to anyone on Earth at any hour with no bank required. That's a fundamentally different scale. The old wildcat banks were limited by geography. Stablecoins are limited by nothing. Now here's where this gets uncomfortable. The Genius Act created compliance standards for US-based stablecoin issuers, but Tether isn't US-based. It's registered in El Salvador. It has no US regulatory license, no European license either. Yet it controls roughly 60% of the global stablecoin market, with 500 million users depending on it. And if Tether ever faced a bank run, a sudden wave of users all trying to redeem at once, it would need to liquidate a significant portion of $135 billion in US Treasuries. Fast. We've seen what happens when confidence cracks. In March 2023, Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. Panic spread to USDC, which briefly fell from $1 to 87 cents. The Fed moved fast. Crisis averted. But USDC's market cap at the time? Around $40 billion. Tether is multiple times larger and sits entirely outside every major regulatory system. If something goes wrong, no one has the authorities or the obligation to step in. So what does the US do about Tether? It doesn't try to shut it down. It builds a better competitor. Enter Circle, the company behind USDC. On June 5, 2025, Circle went public on the New York Stock Exchange, surging 168% on its first day of trading. USDC is the compliant alternative. Reserves managed by BlackRock, audited by Deloitte, backed 100% by cash and short-term treasuries. Fully transparent, the strategy is working. Tether's market share fell from 67.5% to 60.4% through 2025. USDC climbed from roughly 24% to 25.5%. And in real-world payment volumes on-chain, USDC has now overtaken USDT for the first time. The US approach, in plain terms, let Tether keep serving the gray market economies. Let Circle take the institutions, the banks, and the developed world. Either way, the winner is using dollars. The reserves are all in US Treasuries. America wins regardless. While the US is deputizing private companies to extend dollar dominance digitally, China is taking the opposite approach. The People's Bank of China is building the infrastructure itself. The digital yuan, or ECNY, has now processed over $2.3 trillion in cumulative transactions, making it the largest live central bank digital currency in the world. And for cross-border payments, China launched Project mBridge, a multilateral platform connecting the central banks of China, Hong Kong, Thailand, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. By late 2025, mBridge had settled over $55 billion in cross-border transactions. The digital yuan accounts for approximately 95% of all volume on the platform. Here's what makes mBridge structurally significant. Every transaction is settled directly between central banks, with ensured then no need for a U.S. correspondent bank, no SWIFT message, no American intermediary of any kind. A payment from Shanghai to Dubai can settle in seconds. No American institution ever sees it. That's not just faster, that's architecturally different, and both of these systems are now converging in one city. Hong Kong. On April 10, 2026, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority issued its first ever stablecoin licenses. The recipients, HSBC and a Standard Chartered Consortium. Both are planning to launch Hong Kong dollar-pegged stablecoins, integrated into retail banking apps and institutional settlement rails. At the same time, Bank of China Hong Kong is a core participant in the digital yuan cross-border pilots. In the same city, on the same streets, one set of banks is building dollar-adjacent stablecoin infrastructure, while another is extending the sovereign yuan network. Two systems, one city, one battle. Let's be clear about the scale of this competition. The US dollar represents about 57% of global foreign exchange reserves. US dollar stablecoins account for over 99% of the global stablecoin market. The digital yuan through mBridge represents 95% of a $55 billion platform. But stablecoins processed roughly $25 trillion in transactions in 2024 alone. mBridge's total cumulative volume since 2020 and 2021 is around $55 billion. The gap is enormous and honest. China's system is not yet a rival to the dollar's digital reach. What it is infrastructure, a road being built, not yet open to traffic. The direction is set. The architecture is in place. The question is who joins and how fast it scales. In 1863, America ended 26 years of monetary chaos with one law. It worked. For 160 years, the principle held governments control money. In July 2025, the Genius Act quietly reversed that assumption for the digital age. In the same year, China doubled down on the opposite principle. Sovereign infrastructure, state-issued currency, no private intermediaries. Two superpowers, two philosophies. One question. In the digital age, who gets to issue money? Here's what I think is the most honest framing. If you live in a country with a stable currency and a functional banking system, you probably don't feel urgency around this question. But if you live in Argentina, where the peso lost over 100% of its value last year, you might trust a Tether token more than your own central bank. Currency is trust, and trust varies by zip code. What we're watching right now may be the opening act of a monetary transition that takes 30 years to complete. The last time the global reserve currency shifted from the British pound to the US dollar, most people living through it didn't realize it was happening until it was already done. We might be in that moment right now. The architecture is being built. The choices being made by regulators, by central banks, and honestly by every single person who opens a payment app and taps send, are votes in a system most people don't know they're participating in. I'm Kyle. This has been a hard look at the numbers behind the headlines. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.